Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this individual executive member decision. My name's Callum Wernham. I'm a Democratic and Electoral Services Specialist, and I'm clerking the meeting. Making the decision today is Councillor Lindsay Ferris, who's our executive member for planning and the local plan. And from the officer side of things, we've got James McCabe, who's a senior planning officer within the growth and delivery team. And with that, I will pass over to James to just run us through the recommendation and the report.
Very much, Callum. Yeah, so the purpose of the decision today is effectively to agree Woking and Borough Council's response to the Finchampstead Parish Neighbourhood plan, which is subject to consultation at the moment. And so just by way of a bit of background on the neighbourhood plan, the Finchampstead Parish was designated as a neighbourhood area back in 2019. They've been working very hard since then, the Parish Council and volunteers, on producing the plan, so gathering evidence and producing the relevant documents. It's gone through a number of formal stages, the latest of which is the submission consultation, which runs until next Wednesday, the 23rd. So effectively, WBC as a local planning authority has a legal duty to provide support to neighbourhood planning groups. So throughout the kind of 3-4 years that the plan has been in progression, officers have worked closely and providing input onto draft documents and advice on evidence gathering, etc. So the majority of any kind of key areas of concern that we might have had as officers have been addressed effectively through the plan making process to date. So the purpose of this decision, as I mentioned before, is to agree the enclosure 1 to the report, which will effectively be submitted as Woking and Borough Council's response to the ongoing consultation. So the key aspects really of those comments are fundamentally to record the council's support for the plan in meeting its housing need in full through its proposed housing allocations and positive policies, supporting the policy framework around key gaps and wedges that the plan seeks to introduce, and also providing support for the majority of the proposed local green space designations that the plan is seeking to make. So that's a particular land use designation which provides protection to local green areas. Other comments that we raise, not for the proposed areas, we don't consider that there is the evidence to justify those designations is as strong in those particular cases, and we have some queries around 4 of those which we ourselves didn't propose to designate for the local plan, the most recent local plan update consultation. And the other comments primarily focus around minor tweaks to wording of policies in order to kind of improve the effectiveness of those policies and bring them more up to date with best practice and national guidance. So those are around areas of sustainable development, affordable housing, the heritage policy, and also the ecology policy, which had a couple of areas of internal inconsistency where it could have been clearer around the biodiversity net gain that's been sought from that policy. So if those comments are approved today, that's our recommendation, then the next step in the process would be, and we're in the process now of procuring an independent examiner, would be that these comments and all of the representations received to the ongoing consultation will be passed to the examiner with the plan, who will then carry out the independent examination, make sure it meets all the relevant legal and other tests, with the ultimate aim that it would then progress to referendum, and if the local population are in agreement, then the plan would then be adopted and start being used by decision makers on planning applications. So the comments that we are recommending are agreed today would effectively form part of the examiner's assessment, and they will have a look at those and make their own conclusions around the soundness and the effectiveness of the plan.
James, I've got a general question first, because this is the first IMD I've done for a neighbourhood plan. Can you give me a view on the comments that have been made and the suggestions and the wording agree with some modifications as to whether these are major or minor issues as regarding process for the neighbourhood plan?
So fundamentally, they're minor in nature. So as I kind of tried to allude to before, that any kind of areas where we had major sort of concerns or divergence of opinion and where we thought areas of the plan might be subject to challenge through examination, we've sought to kind of iron out those issues beforehand. So the comments that we're making, they don't fundamentally seek to alter the intention of any policy or the overall vision and objectives of the plan. It's really to make sure those policies are as effective and usable as possible. So our view would be that they're kind of minor in nature and assist the effectiveness of the plan, hopefully.
And it says enclosure 1, I presume that includes page 9 and part B of the report we have here. So is it that whole section?
So the comments that we would be submitting to the examiner effectively from page 13 onwards.
Right.
Which is, so that's the response form that we're asking people to
Part B form.
Yeah.
That's fine. I was just clarifying what was actually sent to the. My first area relates to your comment on IRS1, which is the local green spaces. The original proposal has 13 green spaces. You're happy with 9, and you've made comments about 4. Can you just give me a little bit more rationale as to the points that you have raised regarding 4 sites that you feel that still need to have greater information? And I think they're on page 19. Starts at the bottom of page 19 of the agenda. Yeah, sure. James Church.
Yeah. So the first, so local green spaces, it's an area set out in the MPPF. There are basically set requirements which are set out there on page 19 of the pack. So effectively, that they need to be reasonably close proximity to the community it serves, demonstrably special, and local in character, not extensive tracts of land. So the first area where we've raised comments is around the proposed designation of an area around St James's Church and part of the conservation area. So previously, actually a greater area was proposed, which we did have objections to, given it kind of included the curtilage of private residential dwellings, which effectively local green space designation applies. It's almost akin to green belt, that development can only happen in kind of those circumstances.
Restrictive planning rules for them.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So we had concerns there that those homeowners, without having kind of chance to kind of comment and having proposed those themselves, would have their rights in terms of policy restricted somewhat in terms of what they could do to extend their home, etc. So that was our main area of concern with that particular one. The latest evidence as updated has proposed a smaller area, but it still includes the majority of the conservation area effectively, which almost doubles up, layers up various policy protections to that area, where conservation areas, you'll be aware, already have kind of tests in place where development shouldn't harm the heritage assets that are in place.
Are they being what I call belt braces here? If it's already got protection through conservation area, and we've got the open green spaces, I would ask from a resident's perspective, is the conservation area sufficiently strong enough, or does the open green space make it stronger?
So I think the intention of the group is to add additional protection. Our view is that it would have been more beneficial to highlight the particular smaller green spaces that within that conservation area rather than a blanket.
Yeah. You would suggest that they presented two smaller open green spaces, which covers the same area or the majority of the same area?
It would cover a lesser area, but it would cover the specifically green areas, which we think would be more consistent with the MPPF designation rather than the current proposals.
Are any of those areas still in the conservation area, or are they now outside?
Partly, yeah. I think the majority of them they are within the conservation area. Yes. Yeah.
Right. The second area was Simon's Wood. Would you like to comment on that? Because that is, I believe, a very popular
Yes.
walking area, certainly for people walking their dogs.
Yes, definitely. So in terms of Simon's Wood, I think it certainly satisfies the criteria that it's a locally valued area. Our comments around that particular designation are because there are various public rights of way within the site, and the access isn't necessarily to the whole of the area. It's very difficult in practical terms to distinguish between the quality of the area that's within the designation and then land just outside of that designation. The issue really that we have is we're not particularly clear on how the area that is more special that's within the area compared to the area around it, if that makes sense.
Is there any protection on the Simon's Wood at the moment? It's National Trust, isn't it?
It's National Trust land. It would benefit from normal countryside protection. National Trust as the landowner, they have their various kind of stewardship role as well. So they are, it should be noted that the National Trust are supportive of the designation. And our view as officers as well is
A green open space.
yeah, of this particular designation. So our view is not fundamentally that we don't think the area is valued. It's just the practicalities of how an officer would assess an application that might affect that area and how the boundaries are being defined, what the defensible boundaries on the ground.
I'll come back to this one again. The next one is More Green Lakes Nature Reserve.
Yes, so this particular designation we feel is starting to be a kind of area of extensive tract of land. So it's an area of land that was previously worked for minerals extraction. It's now been restored and offers amenity space for people to walk dogs, etc. Again, the evidence is certainly that people within the local area do use it. Our concern, however, is it's starting to branch into that extensive tract of land and double up as a sort of an area to prevent Finchampstead village expanding to the south, which shouldn't be the role of local green spaces.
I can understand where they're coming from. Security. And I think with it being a nature reserve, what status does the nature reserve give it?
So nature reserve, it would benefit from its own protections as public open space, effectively. So we don't necessarily feel that the local green space designation is necessary.
If being designated the local green space doesn't make it safer from that perspective from development, or is nature reserve strong enough to do that?
It would. I think it's fair to say it would add a degree of additional protection, given that very special circumstances effectively have to be shown for development in local green spaces. Nature reserves, however, they do benefit from protection in terms of national policy and other legislation on their own. I think our fundamental concern with this one is just given the size of the particular local green space 7A at More Green Lakes and the kind of adjacent areas which are also proposed for designation, it does start to become a really extensive tract of land that isn't kind of local in
Do you not
nature.
consider the similar approach you did with church station area about art into multiple parts, or is it not appropriate for that?
Yeah, I think it's slightly different character in terms of the whole. It's the whole of the nature reserve and the kind of walk around that route, which is intrinsically it is one site. I think it'd be difficult to package that up into smaller sections, which would be worthy on their own of designation. I think it's a slightly different situation.
Open green space, what other safeguards from development? Because I think a nature reserve is pretty strong, but is there anything else that could be used as instead or in addition?
In terms of other mechanisms, I can't think of anything else. I mean, fundamentally, it would be countryside. It's an area of the borough so you do have Finchampstead village to the north, but that's one of our kind of low order settlements and sustainable locations.
So your main objection is the size, the tract of the site.
Effectively, yeah, I think it would be difficult to argue that that does satisfy the criteria in the MPPF. And obviously these comments will go to, the parish will have their own view on that. These comments will go to the examiner, and they fundamentally it's their task to come down either way. Yes.
So, and the third one is the ridges.
Yes, so a similar issue to Simon's Wood again. So again, National Trust land, it is well used. It's not a principal objection. It's just around the practicalities of how that area is defined on the ground, and whether there is the public rights of way and access throughout that whole site. Which again, we just feel it may cause issues for decision makers further down the line.
I feel that the parish might come three votes for. I think the first one, I would suggest it being divided into two, and largely feminist. I don't think it would be an issue. I think the parish and the residents would want to understand some of the rationale more, and I think that is something that I think factor, because it seems to be on the woodland type aspect, and also the size and tract. I think, to be honest, they're a bit grey. That's just my observation.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm happy to take your comments, not amend them, but I'm expecting some pushback.
Yeah, and
parish, because if it was my parish, I would do the same.
Yes,
so
and I think that's what the idea would be. The examiner would read these comments, see the views, and they would kind of seek clarifications through their process on, okay, what if they don't understand a particular point, what they would seek further information on that. And I think that the parish, the qualifying body themselves, will be asked to provide their view. I think fundamentally we don't disagree with the principle of designating any of the areas. It's just around as I said, the practicalities of interpreting those from the decision-making point of view.
What would I be able to say here? Because I'm somewhere between. James has gone through and he's assessed them, and he's got his using the MPPF as the guidelines, and I think that it's still a bit grey. Was there anything that you say I can make a slight wording change? Is there anything I can put in to say that, or do we leave it up to the examiners and the process? Because are we dyed in the wool about this?
So effectively this would be our response, and that would be what the examiner would consider in the first instance. As I say, they if they have any further questions, they can clarify that, and it's within the examiner's gift to have. Typically, neighbourhood plan examinations are done via written representations rather than hearings, but they can arrange for hearings and or just arrange for conference calls.
Complexity of the neighbourhood plan.
So it's completely up to you, Lindsay. So we could add at the end of on page 21 that final paragraph. We could add another paragraph that summarises your comments that were made at the IMD, which is then I don't know if that'd be acceptable to incorporate that into our response.
I think so. I can't see why it wouldn't be. That's Lindsay's the decision maker.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I was just thinking sort of process wise that the inspector wouldn't find that abnormal, or
I don't think so.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking what words I put there, because I think my view is that I think that councillors have focused, using the MPPF as the guidelines, and that I think 3 or 4 sites that have been declined. I think there's may need a further bit of evaluation, because I think I have walked in the woods, in Simon's woods, but I haven't really driven around Finchampstead, so I don't know the area very well. But I just feel that if I was a parish person in the area, I'd be a bit uncertain as to the rationale.
Yeah.
That one of them is size, one of them is the type of land. So I just think that I would just say that I have some
I can just put
queries I think what I'm saying is that James has used the guidelines as the planning officer, and I'm happy that that's what the guidelines are.
Yep.
But I feel the NPPF of green space is still a bit grey or a bit vague in certain aspects, and I think that personally I wouldn't necessarily be too opposed to certainly the type of thing and the nature reserves. I'm sure there's other nature reserves in the borough that have been proposed in neighbourhood plans as to become a local green space, because that's what they are. They're green space.
Yeah.
So I just want to make some sort of
yeah, I can put that at the IMD meeting you commented that just to clarify, Lindsay, which were the three?
well, it's the one I don't have any problem with. There's the space one, because
Space one, so it's space 5,
so
7A.
by dividing it in two, they're still getting the green space protection, and I would have sympathy with the householders there,
Yeah.
that if they were in green space and they effectively had
Yeah.
to have to be in a same status as being in the green belt and therefore restrictive. I think it's unfair on them as it's not a green belt at the moment. So that's I fully support.
Yes, I should clarify, Lindsay, in terms of the residents being included, that was at a previous iteration of the plan. So that as proposed, green space one as proposed doesn't include any private residential.
The first one did, but
Yeah.
they do now.
Yes.
Okay.
So what we could say is that you commented with regards to local green space 5, 7A,
7A
and 9. That you commented that they may require further consideration, and then I'm looking to James here for some technical wording with regards to.
I guess with regards to compliance with the criteria in the MPPF.
Perfect. Yeah. The criteria within the MPPF.
It may be worth. I think I was trying to get to really in the phraseology around. We would invite the examiner to consider. I think we could invite them to potentially to pay particular attention to when they go and visit those sites, to factor that into their site visits when they come to the.
Have you written that in there?
I've written the word in
Because what we could say is that at the IMD, the executive member commented that 5, 7A, and 9 may require further consideration with regards to compliance with the criteria within the MPPF, and would invite the inspector to pay particular attention to these sites. Or do they go on a site visit? Do they?
Yeah, they effectively they were doing an unaccompanied site visit to the parish, basically.
Yeah.
So the extent of that is up to them, but Lindsay could potentially suggest to them that it would be worthwhile doing a proper extensive visit to these sites.
Yes, because I think I'm somewhere between.
Yeah.
It's not you're using the guidelines and I'm using my view as an exec member and a resident that I would be more inclined to accept it, but there's the reasons. But if there are reasons why they have to go through the right category, then the examiner can look at it themselves and say, are these suitable or not? Really, what I'm saying.
So yeah, at the IMD meeting, the executive member commented that sites 5, 7A, and 9 may require further consideration with regards to compliance with the criteria within the MPPF, and invited the inspector to pay particular extensive consideration when considering these sites, or when visiting these sites. When visiting.
I guess when considering and visiting.
When considering.
And visiting.
Is that all right, Lindsay?
Yes, that gives a hint.
Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll add that to the decision sheet, so you can sign it, and I'll add that, and I'll circulate the wording to you, James. Are there any other additions or amendments?
I think most of the others were seen to be more procedural to me, and I think they're the sort of things I need the planning officers and the examiner to deal with. They're quite subtle. Have we? Brooks Farm is actually in Barkham rather than Finchampstead. Yes, so that's all right. That's okay. Because that was one site that I've been quite involved with. Yeah, I think some of them are just seem to be technicalities. Your GA2 ones, that one. Ecology, areas and biodiversity, I'm okay on that. Conservation and stuff. Now we've had a bit of discussion about there's quite a large part or a significant part of the Finchampstead area that is within a conservation zone, and there are some historic buildings down there. How well are they protected with what's being proposed and what you've got comments, because you've got some modifications?
Yeah, so we've got national and local policy already in place, which conserves and seeks the enhancement of historic of heritage assets effectively. So where neighbourhood plans typically add value is they identify their kind of non-designated heritage assets, so assets which wouldn't be statutory listed, wouldn't be grade 1 or grade 2 or grade 2 star listed buildings, but nevertheless have historic interest. So that's where a neighbourhood plan normally seeks to identify those and have policy wording around that.
I wouldn't think. Is there any grade 1s there? Oh, they're quite rare, aren't they?
Yeah, they're quite. I think that there's grade 2 star, but off the top of my head, I don't believe there are any grade 1 within Finchampstead. No. Our comments really on this policy were that the plan provides a list of heritage assets, but it doesn't define whether those are designated or non-designated. So there's a lack of clarity there. And then the policy wording itself, it doesn't actually seek to introduce any to identify, or there isn't any evidence to justify the nomination of any non-designated heritage assets. So the wording that we've proposed is effectively to future-proof the plan and say that if the parish decided that there were areas that they wanted to advance evidence for and nominate those, then they could be recognised through WBC zone processes, and then in that event, this policy wording would then kind of apply to those. So that it was a bit of a gap in the evidence.
It feels procedural.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. If it's procedural, I'm not going to make it. On the ecology front, an area that I'm particularly interested in, saving the local veteran trees. Has the neighbourhood plan covered that sufficiently? And because you've got the comments on ecology, is it IRS 5 that would come under, or is there another part that would be?
So there are various policies actually within the plan which talk around landscape strategies, and development proposals need to pay attention to the trees that are on site and protecting those of value. So that's covered, not in IRS 5. I haven't got the reference off the top of my head. It's not a policy that we had any particular comments on, but there are policies within the plan.
Tree strategy.
Yeah.
And wanting to try and get the veteran trees included in the local plan, and I mentioned that to both Ian's. Just to recite or email him. So I'm just, if there was something in there, is there anything in there that I can enforce it better? It's strengthening it anywhere. Is there anywhere that I think that they could do with strengthening?
I don't think so. I think that effectively the policies talk around having arboricultural surveys undertaken as part of development proposals. So part of that would be a specialist would have a look at the trees. Our own specialists would consider those. And I think it's adequately covered.
That's the trouble.
Yeah.
Okay, if you feel that that's just something that beginning discussion with them, and raised with them was to say that because there's quite a wooded area down there, there must be quite a few trees in there.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that the plan, the key aspects of the vision and the objectives are conserving the character and the wooded character is identified.
I've raised issues about whether there's protection.
Yeah, how would you like that worded?
I think my personal view on that would be, I'm not sure if that kind of strays beyond.
Strays beyond, does it?
I think-
All right, if it strays beyond the role, I'm quite happy to.
I think
Because I've not done one before.
Yeah, where I'm coming from, I think basically they've chosen to address all the areas that they want to address. And if there's something that they haven't thought of or haven't considered as a key area, I'm not sure it's for us to highlight that they should be looking at it.
It's okay, no, that's the process, understand.
But I guess in your capacity as a ward, you may want to submit comments to that effect to the consultation. You can your own personal view, and we potentially take the examiner could take that.
Yeah, I was just thinking about across the whole borough then, because I started with, can we have a TRO on all 8,000 of them? And then look, it's all right. But it's the policy, and we've now got the tree strategy, and we're starting to develop a policy. And that's just all that I was mentioning, because they may not have understood, but I take your point. Other than that, I'm happy.
Brilliant. I've actually just had a query from a ward member. I don't know if you can answer it now whilst we're in the meeting. Do we know when the independent examiner will carry out their review? Do we have an ETA on that?
So we've effectively gone out to a sort of tender process. So there's a referral service who have provided us with some a short list of examiners. We're still going through that kind of assessment process and getting the view of the parish on their kind of assessment. But both the application form that we submitted was effectively that the consultation ends on the 23rd. So as soon as possible after that is closed. So effectively, we'd expect it to begin in late November, early December, and then how long it takes depends on the issues that are raised, really, and how long is a piece of string in terms of how long it would last. December, and the majority of it. And
then if it then proceeds to a referendum, what's the timescales on that?
Again, we'd have to work through the timescales. It would require a decision of executive to agree to the referendum. So it depends on how long the examination takes when we could fit that in.
And then finally on that, would the referendum be open to just Finchampstead North and Finchampstead South residents, or would it also include working without residents?
It would include, I'd have to clarify with electoral services, but as Finchampstead Parish covers part of working without.
It would cover that.
It would cover residents who live in.
It would cover the ward, a part of ward of working without, but it would cover the Finchampstead Parish residents,
which would include that polling area.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. So if we move to the recommendation, so for those who are watching, it's on agenda page 5. So the recommendation is that the executive member for planning the local plan agrees that Woking Borough Council submits the comments contained in enclosure 1 as this council's response to the Finchampstead Neighbourhood Plan draft submission plan. And the additional paragraph that Lindsay has asked to be added is, at the IMD meeting held on the 15th of the 11th, 2022, the executive member commented that local green spaces 5, 7A and 9 may require further consideration with regards to compliance with the criteria within the MPPF, and invited the inspector to pay particular extensive consideration when considering and visiting these sites. So with that amendment, are you happy to make that decision, Lindsay?
I am.
If we now just quickly sign the decision sheet.
You're the top 2 boxes.
Thank you. And then you will read little box, James. Brilliant. So thank you very much. So subject to the standard 5-day call-in period, these comments with that additional amendment will be submitted as the council's official response. So with that, I will bring the meeting to a close. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.